Hello. If this video has appeared on your screen, then it's materialized right when you needed it to. Now, I want to preface this with the title of this being part 2 of the Ghost Rider series, and I'm going to make a playlist of that. Let me move my keys here. But I'm going to make a playlist with all of the parts so that if somebody wants to watch that, if they feel called to the movie for whatever reason, after listening to like other things, or maybe just straight up listening to those first, I figured make it available for people. But yeah, with everything that's been going on, I was planning on getting this video out earlier this week, but I've been kind of dealing with some curveballs. One of which being I got sick for whatever reason. And it wasn't like a normal sickness either, because it wasn't the flu and it wasn't anything else. And I'm thinking it might be some sort of energetic upgrade or something. I don't know. I'm still new to all of this myself, so I'm still learning. But based off the symptoms alone and like double checking to make sure like it was not like food poisoning or anything, I'm very inclined to think it was some sort of like energy thing. So I don't know. But the point is, that's the good news for the week, because I was able to take a day off because of it. So it sucks, but I'm trying to stay positive about that, because I'm still kind of like dealing with some of the pain from my stomach and everything. But thank goodness it's definitely gotten a lot better. Today I was able to eat, so I figured why not make the next part. It's already done. I just have to sit down and record it. But yeah, I don't know. Do I have any other good news? No, I think that's it. I am, other than having this part done, that's the other part of the good news. So, for myself and for other people that might need this, excuse me, I cannot speak sometimes. But yeah, I think this part, I'm going to go ahead and put a disclaimer real quick. Just because I wanted to always do that with these videos, I want to cover my butt in case someone decides to use this information and then do something crazy, and then blame me for it. So, which, those people might actually have needed it more than anybody else, to be honest. But with that being said, the movie itself, again, it's definitely one of my favorites, despite the campiness of it. I sometimes feel that a lot of stories are underrated. Just because they aren't made great doesn't mean that it's not a good story. You kind of have to look past the way that it's produced to see the full picture of what they were trying to say, because you have to kind of put yourself in each character's shoes and understand the emotions that they might be feeling. At least that's what I do, to kind of try to understand each character a little more, and kind of figure out why the author or the writer chose those decisions for those characters. And to me, it makes complete sense how Johnny reacted to things, and that's kind of something I'm covering in this part. But if you are not able to talk about politics, or you don't want to talk about politics, this video might not be for you. But then again, it might be the one for you. Maybe it's something you or a family member need to hear, and feel free to share if you want to. But yeah, and it's definitely something I'm still going to have to be vulnerable with y'all. But yeah, I feel like a lot of what I touch on in this channel, I'm going to have to be vulnerable from here on out anyway. So y'all are going to get to know me real well. At least the things that I've learned in my life. But also, I guess the other good news is my beard is coming in. It's a little uneven, as you can tell, but I'm happy with it. I don't really care what other people think about it, because I'm like, it's mine. That's all that matters. As a trans person, like, I hate shaving just because it gives me dysphoria. But yeah, anyway. But as I said before in the last video, I might have to stop. There might be some cuts just because it's hot. It's the middle of summer and where I live. And with where I'm living right now, I have to have it constantly on. But for the sake of sound and not having it be on the entire time and annoying people, including myself, I turn it off. So it might be a little longer this time, maybe like 35, 40 minutes for the reading part, maybe in total, I don't know. But thank you if you decide to listen to the whole thing. Share it, like it. It helps me so much, and it helps kind of get me a little bit more out there, as well as supporting the dreams that I have of writing books. And who knows, maybe somebody out there will see what I do and be like, oh, you know, they'd be great for this part. Blah, 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 you know, that's kind of a once in a blue moon type thing. But, you know, one can wish. But yeah, let me know what your good news is this week in the comments. I really want to know what happened this week that's good for you. Because Lord knows we all need some sort of positivity right now, especially with what's going on in ye old USA. But with that being said, I figured I would start off the second part. But if you have not watched the first part, go ahead and watch part 1 if you are so inclined. But yeah, let me go ahead and get started. All right, so let me get this in a good spot here. All right, let me get comfy here. Picking up where I left off, if you didn't see the first video in this mini-series, I strongly suggest you watch that one first. In the last video, I talked about passions and how they were key to finding my mission and my happiness, but in addition to film and making movies, my other passion is writing. Creative writing, to be precise. If you didn't know, I am a writer of several books, one of which is a third of the way done, and another that is just over half. Of course, I will preface this with they are not published. I haven't published any books yet, but that's the point of the channel, in addition to helping people. So yeah, I figured I'd clarify that real quick. This overlaps with my movie passion because as a kid, I dreamed of becoming a director or actor or both. I wanted to create movies with my friends just for fun, no matter how bad it might have been. Bad. I even created a little movie about a dragon and a princess, and of course I was the dragon because dragons were and still are cool to me. Complete with commercials. Like an Orbit commercial. It was so funny. But yeah, we had a set, we had costumes, and we had roles. The whole works. The thing is, I completely forgot about every aspect of this over time. I completely forgot that even happened. The world weighs us down with fear and doubt to the point it cripples us because of the systems in place and how they are built that way on purpose. The saying of being cogs in a well-oiled machine is absolutely true. The systems aren't broken. They were designed that way by broken people. Where was I? By broken people that refused to heal and let that ripple out until we find that the only thing that happens is that we destroy each other because of our differences. That's the same reason we could save each other. But only if we agree that healing and loving are the answer, completely and totally. Our passions are our path to connection. If we love what we do, we never work a day in our life, right? So do that. Do whatever it takes within reason to fulfill your dreams. Don't listen to anyone else but what you and your guides want for your life. The goal is sovereignty, to do as you please spiritually, wherever you're guided, and that you do it with love in your heart for yourself and others and the planet. This isn't hyperbole either. The more that positive energy and intention happens, it ripples out, just like that unhealed energy And that unhealed energy affects other people, if that makes sense. I did not read it for typos. I'm so sorry. Apparently. But moving on. Then they do the same because they feel safe enough to do so. And then it keeps rippling outward until almost everyone can feel like they are enough and can start healing and removing what no longer serves them. For example, the more we learned that writing left-handed wasn't a handicap, we saw that the more we just let it happen, it eventually leveled out over time. That's what will happen when we finally decide as a human species to let ourselves live as we are supposed to, individually and collectively, simultaneously, because it all starts inside each of us. The more we understand ourselves, the more we can understand others around us. And when we understand others around us, we can then create a world that we've always wanted. I say all this because a lot of us have many passions, and we just have to figure out how those are connected, following our emotions as to what feels true and what does not, but also not taking that at face value. It's a constant investigation until you find it. Sometimes you feel alone in doing so, and for me, I was. The majority of my life. Sure, my parents loved that I was so creative, but they didn't understand the depth of my soul when it came to how much I loved film and writing stories. It was my superpower, meant to be shared and experienced by others, yet I have no idea how I'll get there, which is very true. But that I have to trust that spirit will lead me to where I need to go. In my book, Real Television with One Foot in Reality, the cover is something I designed myself. The imagery is very intentional. The sword at the top of Mount Everest, stuck in the rock, the beacon I followed until I realized if I looked up, the stars also bore truth. Until I found myself floating into the unknown, a place that wasn't limited to coincidences or meaningless stories, but was a place that used both of those to speak to me about where my life was headed. I used the astronaut because it was something I resonated with very much, with the movie Interstellar, especially the docking scene. It's very symbolic to me. I'll talk about that more when I do the Interstellar series on this channel, which should be coming up soon. I just have one other movie that I'll be covering in regard to its relation to my own journey. But the point here is that when we find the puzzle pieces of our lives and how they click together, everything starts to make sense, one clue at a time. If we allow ourselves to live serendipitously and with constant curiosity to the point that we might think we're crazy for thinking something means something significant, a lot of the times your instinct is right. You just haven't found the reason why yet. You haven't found the right perspective. Confirmation burp. It's no wonder I love puzzles in any form. Don't get me wrong. They aren't a big passion of mine, but more of a hobby I enjoy from time to time. I love puzzles because they challenge you. Puzzles come in all different shapes and sizes, like links and chains. Each link connects to the other until you see the full picture. Just like your interests, the things you're drawn to, they're so frustrating sometimes, but fun. Just like anything in life that you're trying to learn, you get frustrated at first when you are first learning how to do it, and that's okay. This life can be hard to figure out when you've forgotten everything and been trained out of it. But the way back can be reversed. The puzzle of life isn't all gumdrops and roses. The bad has its place too in the larger picture. If we didn't have the bad, we wouldn't be able to enjoy the good or know that there was something better. We see the bad all the time, but we never stop to think if something on the opposite end of the spectrum is even something worth pursuing. Because we've been out of school for too long. We've stopped being curious about the world and how we fit into it. We're trained to believe that nothing actually has significance, yet synchronicities and meaning is all around us. The puzzle pieces turn into stepping stones, and then those stones lead you to a possible reality you didn't think was even real. But to get there, sometimes it takes steady curiosity instead of desperate attempts to solve it quickly. You can't, and that's part of the journey. Just like in Ghost Rider, Johnny had to figure out how to control or work with the fire inside of him. You also have that flame. You just have to steer that flame towards things it's supposed to find and use as fuel to find the tools meant for you and your own purpose, your own sovereignty. But you also have to be open to facing yourself on all levels, facing your truth, good and bad, facing your mistakes, your fears, and your limiting beliefs about what is possible in this reality. Once you finally find the direction you want the fire to go, you let it burn. Sometimes that fire can hurt when you find a part of yourself that you didn't know existed, an insecurity or a fear or something you thought you'd already dealt with. But once you get through that fire and you follow that trail until you find whatever it is that excites you most, you fulfill that passion until there's nothing in it for you anymore. Then you move on to a new one. Sometimes, though, you never get tired of something. That's a true passion, in my opinion. And to me, in my experience, that means that passion is meant to serve a purpose that isn't just for you. It's for others too. Just like my own inner fire needs to spread and touch the hearts of those who have lost hope and those who feel alone and that feel just like I did when I was younger, that the world was lost and cruel, to warm it and to help brighten their eyes and give them a reason to live for themselves. But before you or I can do that, you have to go through the crucible that is life. We all start out with a little spark of joy as children, and slowly that spark turns into a flame. A small one, but fierce and bright. But then the world dims it, calling it too much, too destructive, too wild. Untamed by the drudges of society and yet slowly losing its fuel. Happiness, curiosity, creativity, and most of all, hope and sometimes kindness. The human world will harden you, but only if you let it. Only if you let your own inner Ghost Rider fizzle out. You must keep that determination to keep whatever amount of light inside you alive. It's hard, but completely worth it in the end. Not just for you, but for your future and your family's futures. That's how generational curses are formed and broken. Because someone either decided enough was enough or let the curse continue onward. Or someone who lives in both worlds and finds use in both sides of the scale. Think of how amazing humanity would be and the impact that would have on the earth. No more crazy weather patterns because we took care of the earth. A lot less crime because we all find each other important and beautiful or handsome. A lot less control is needed because we all have a compass that guides us inside for our highest good. It wouldn't be perfect, but we would live in an imperfect harmony with the cycles of our lives and the cycles of the earth. Learning to appreciate the lives we have with the love that would ultimately hold dominion over us, but instead of love being held over us, it would live within and around us. Genuine smiles that hide people's eyes, and those smiles stretching from ear to ear in laughter at the most boring dad joke ever. Because we have finally found that balance between the extremes of life. We've found what's most important. Love. All types of love. Platonic, romantic, sexual, whatever. It all has purpose. It wouldn't matter at that point if something happened that was bad. We'd let it roll off our shoulders because we knew people could help us instead of feeling alone and unable to cope with the situation because of fear. For example, let's say you get into a car accident. Wouldn't you want to live in a world where people stopped and asked if you were okay and stayed until the paramedics came and felt like they could do so? And they weren't rushed to go to work? Or would you rather live in a world where the only people that cared was your insurance company because they needed to know who was at fault? It's all about perspective, intention, and love. And speaking of, no one is truly evil. Even the worst people in humanity were never truly evil. They were damn close, I will say. Don't get me wrong, but not in their soul. Imagine if that person, whichever person is in your mind right now, had the right kind of love in their life. They may have never done the things they did. There would be more people in the world and more understanding. Of course, I digress, but hopefully you get the picture. In relation to this, let's talk about art for a second, since it's my third and final true passion. It's taken a back seat for now, but it's something I'll always enjoy, even if it's just doodles. Now, in art, you have to have good light as a source, right? And you have to have enough of a difference of tone and shade and color in order to make sure the image reads correctly to the viewer. The less contrast you have and the less diversity you have, the harder the image is to perceive. The proportions might be off, or maybe the hair is a little wonky, or one eye is bigger, but it's still readable, right? Because you used enough contrast to at least make out what it is. Confirmation burp. Excuse me. Now, if you apply that to the crucible of life, you get something I like to call the crucible of contrast. If you take werewolves, for example, as far as a subject to draw, like I used to and still sometimes do, to me they represent the wild nature of myself. But they also represent that raw power within you and I, in my opinion. Depending on who you ask, a werewolf could be so awesome and be able to control their shift, whereas if you ask another person, they say that it's uncontrollable. It's that perspective difference, that contrast in viewpoints. To me, werewolves are the part of me that longs for freedom and seeing myself clearly in all aspects, being able to switch easily from one form to another with little to no pain, understanding the way I tick, the triggers I have, the trauma, the guilt or sadness I still carry sometimes, all of it. I have been hungry all of my life for knowledge. Just like a werewolf, I refused to let myself be stagnant. There was always something to improve. I ran in the darkness trying to protect myself from the hunters of the world, those people who kept saying that the world was cruel and it's just how it is and to just deal with it. I refused to believe that this fire within me was not true, that it couldn't be realized, and so I hid it. I stayed human. I hid the side of me that was wild for a long time. I hid the wild nature of my heart, the radical kindness that doesn't think it's impossible to change shape or change the world. That's why I love werewolves, because they mean something completely different to me than the usual uncontrollable beast of mankind within us. And for the record, I don't think actual shape-shifting is a thing, obviously. But moving on. We change shape all the time, right? We're all different sizes and shapes, and we can lose and gain weight, right? So why should it be any different when it comes to behavior in the human psyche? It's hard, and it takes a lot of effort and removal of temptation or triggers in order to achieve that, right? Same goes for life. If you have enough contrast, you'll see yourself clearly. You'll learn what your boundaries are, and you'll learn to guard your energy. Guard your fire from being dimmed. You'll guard your inner werewolf from silver bullets. If you see what's coming or what is required, you'll be better prepared to deal with it. Whereas if you let yourself sit in the dark when the light comes, those truths we weren't ready to deal with yet, that freedom and spotlight from the moon, feels dangerous. It makes us react, a lot of the time negatively. We lash out, we project, and we pounce on someone who was genuinely trying to help. Like a loved one who chained us up for our own good because they knew we would be dangerous when the truth came out and the moon was full. And sometimes the sharpness of our words feel like fangs. They tear that person apart that was genuinely trying to help, leaving yourself feeling betrayed and possibly burning a bridge because we refused to deal with it. And yet, for me, that contrast of learning about what makes people react out of anger means that people were not mean or cruel on purpose, although in the moment it might have seemed that way. but that they were hurt one too many times, and they let that harden them and their hearts forever, like Medusa's gaze or a penance stare from Ghost Rider himself, forcing them to stay in that mindset that they deserve the pain, that they deserve to live with those sins at the forefront of their mind for the rest of their lives. And like I said, that's how we get to where we are now, especially politically right now. It rippled outward, and it's especially true in regard to LGBT people. If you remember the R&D from before the election, you might recall that Grindr had a massive surge of users on during the convention. And if you know what the R&D is, or if you don't, look it up. Pretty easy to understand what I'm talking about there. Think about that for a second, though. Those people, some of them lawmakers, influencers, or leaders, felt so ashamed of themselves that they joined a political movement that would ultimately burn them if they ever decided to come out. That's self-destruction. That's self-harm. Deep down, they don't think it's possible to love themselves as they are, let alone that the world would be brighter if they did. Of course, this doesn't excuse their behavior. It just shines a light on themselves that they aren't ready to face. They are actively trying to legislate away the parts of themselves they were told were unworthy, unnatural, or evil. So they lash out with harsh bills and hatred in their hearts that spills out of their mouths and allow that to ripple out into the energy of the world. All of that energy, repressed, bitter, and unloved, ripples outward. Angry at those of us who decided to come out anyway because they couldn't have the same thing, when in reality they could if they took a hard look within themselves. But they haven't, leaving us all weighed down with them, because at some point in their lives they were taught that the world was too dangerous to be themselves. The fiery chains that were used to make the world this way can also be used to undo it. You just have to light that fire within yourself first and let that inner Ghost Rider show others the way, but they have to go through the dark in order to find the light within themselves. I mention all of this because if you think to the scene in Ghost Rider where Johnny asks his manager if someone should have to pay for a mistake they made for the rest of their life, that was very important to his character. He had been beating himself up on the inside so long, he didn't care if he lived or died. He just wanted to pay penance for the accident from long ago and that he made a mistake. He wanted to rectify it. He let himself crash time and again. He didn't care about himself anymore. That's why the joke after the first crash at the show, Johnny asks his manager, "Have you tried not crashing?" And then his manager retorts, "Have you?" He was punishing himself for his real and perceived mistakes and never let himself live it down. I also did that for the longest time. Anytime anything good happened in my life, it somehow crumbled in my hands. I hated myself. It's like that line from the Netflix show Lucifer, where he starts to lose control of his devil face and he starts permanently becoming his devil self. He says, "Why do I hate myself so much?" I faked it until I, sort of made it. I survived, but I wasn't thriving. I was going through the motions and not truly living, to the point that I felt like a mouse in a cage going through the same maze every single day, or like a cat that walks the same path every day and the path was flattened because I never let myself expand beyond what was comfortable. I felt like I didn't deserve happiness or love. I felt like I was a terrible human being. I didn't give myself any grace whatsoever. Johnny didn't think he was worthy of love, which was why he pushed Roxanne away. He felt like a bad person and that he had to spare her from himself. He saw her as his second chance because something good finally came into his life and he was terrified he could screw it up again and inevitably did, but not because he wanted to, but because of outside forces. The energies and wounds he was dealing with and hadn't learned how to integrate yet. That's how I was for the longest time. I lived my life in fear. I didn't care about myself, but I cared about the people around me. I was pouring from an empty martini cup, missing its red and yellow jelly beans. I was missing the joy and the beauty of life because of past mistakes. Yet I knew that it didn't have to ripple outward. It could be used to fuel me rather than hurt me. I just didn't know how to control that fire yet. I didn't know how to control my life. I felt like my life was predestined to fail and that I'd eventually follow my father's footsteps and self-delete. Yet Johnny found purpose outside of himself because he loved Roxanne. He sold his soul to save his father he loved so much. He kept the ghostwriter at the end because he realized he could use that power of unyielding love he had and use it against those who would wish others harm by showing them the power of that love. That he could take something forced on him and use it against his enemies. Just like the chain at the beginning that Blackheart and his cohorts tried to hang him with or run him over or crush him with. Love is the contrast that tracks what side of the scale you're on and how balanced it is on the individual and collective level. Your love for yourself is the spark, and loving others is the catalyst for a better inner and outer world. But if you think about refining metalwork sometimes, you have to melt metal before you can use it. If you let that fire burn and learn from it, you're essentially refining your spirit and healing it at the same time. Cauterizing the wound so that you don't have to open it again. You'll have integrated it and let it purify you. It's a trial by fire, but it's a fire that's so worth the emotional and sometimes physical pain. For example, when I finally cut off my energy from certain people and dissected them from my life, both people I loved and people I could no longer tolerate physically, I pulled muscles in my back so bad I had to call out of work. That had not happened before. It was symbolic of all the weight I was carrying in my world. The emotional and a little of the physical weight was staggering. I was finally able to relax, and once I relaxed, my body followed suit. They say the body remembers just as much as the mind. There is a connection to your mind, body, and spirit. That's why certain three-pronged symbols exist, like the triquetra, if I can speak today, or the triskele. You just have to be willing to endure the darkness and get burned before you heal. When you heal, that slag that forms outside of you in the form of pain, emotionally, physically, or mentally, gets pushed to the top so that you have to deal with them. You remove what no longer serves, just like metal work refinement takes those impurities that rise to the top using different techniques. Sometimes, for example, they use borax, a thing that can be used to kill ants or make homemade silly putty. Sometimes in life, that can be in the form of friends that aren't actually your true friends because they are only meant to stay for a little while in your life. They are meant to show you that you deserve more, that you deserve better friends. You just have to realize it first, and then you remove those people from your life if they don't change or until they do. But the thing is, this fire doesn't just purify, it shows you if you're ready or not to move on to the next level. To be completely honest, if you remember what we talked about in the first episode of this particular mini-series, I talked about feeling cursed, and I want to reiterate something here with that. If you let that fire inside you have nowhere to escape, you'll feel like Johnny when he's forced to change into Ghost Rider, going through hell on the inside until it forces its way through you to make you face the truth, making you hit rock bottom, and then you realize that you have nowhere to go but up. But if you wait until then, it's a lot harder for you to get up and running, to get things started with your passions, to find that true fulfillment and joy rather than something synthesized and designed to keep you broken, such as addiction. For example, let's say you are someone who was addicted to drugs or alcohol, whatever it may be. If you catch it early enough and you acknowledge that you have a problem, you can rectify the issue, albeit with some difficulty. But if you wait until you've lost your home, your job, or your support system, now you're starting over from zero. You'll wish you had done something sooner. It reminds me of the song, quote, "Started from the Bottom" by Drake. You start from the bottom and work your way up, physically, mentally, and spiritually. It's not impossible, but it takes so much more work to untangle it all. It takes guts. It takes that inner fire. In relation to that, sometimes people don't have an inner fire to work with. Sometimes all they have is a couple of sticks and try to make use of it in any way they know how. Which leads me to my next subject that is definitely connected. Stay with me here. The word, quote, woke. Why is that such a hot topic for people? Especially if you're watching this and identify as right-leaning, I genuinely want to hear what your side of this is after you watch this part of the video, if you are watching at this point. If you've made it this far, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. That means that you're open to the idea of what I'm talking about too. I'm proud of you for that. Truly, I am. I want to approach this with honesty and empathy. Like I said earlier with the people at the RNC, many of them learned early on that the world was too dangerous to be themselves. So they chose control, chose conformity, chose a party that ironically punishes them for the very thing they're suppressing. I'm not excusing harmful behavior, but I am saying a lot of what we see in politics is unhealed trauma disguised as conviction. And yes, sometimes people do weaponize their trauma. Sometimes, like the werewolf analogy I used earlier, people feel so out of control that they lash out. Everything feels like a threat. Their vision is red. They're in survival mode 24/7. And anything that asks them to soften or reflect or wake up, woke, is seen as weakness. And sometimes that rage and anger is a fear response, not true fury. That fear is scarcity on steroids, which turns into anger. Like a werewolf, they're hungry for anything that will make them feel safe on a subconscious level. They attack because they want to get rid of the threat, which feels scary when they are confronted with something that challenges their thought process or their worldview. That's why so many people on the far right reject anything woke, in my opinion. Because to them, waking up means admitting they've been wrong, that they've been hurt, that they believe lies and were duped. And that's terrifying. But it also uncovers their righteous fury, and if misdirected, can have a negative effect on us all, which is why it needs to be handled with care. They've been taught to settle, to accept the bare minimum in life, emotionally, spiritually, even financially. That's why some have spent literal millions of dollars they didn't have to support someone who would ultimately hurt them in the end. But we, the ones who have done the inner work, who carry both softness and fire, we can choose to respond differently. We call out harmful behavior, set firm boundaries, and when possible, explain ourselves. But we can also walk away. We don't have to carry their anger, but we also don't have to become it. Of course, there are moments where anger is righteous, like I said before, like what's happening in Florida with those detention centers. That deserves every ounce of outrage. That is completely justified. But even in those cases, we must remember no one is truly evil, just extremely wounded. And love, even tough love, is the only way we get through this. If we keep stoking the fires by poking and prodding each other with blame, we're never going to get anywhere. It's especially important not to joke about people unless we know them. We never know what people are going through or what their tipping point is. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be there and listen, like really listen, and notice whether or not their energy feels aligned with yours. Sometimes all anyone needs is a person to talk to, but everyone who needs help, but not everyone who needs help is yours to save. Some people just want to be heard, and some will try to manipulate your good heart. Just be aware and use your discernment. Always think of the saying, quote, "It's all fun and games until someone loses an eye," unquote, or, quote, "It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt," unquote. You can be funny without turning someone else into the punchline. We're not just responsible for what we say, but how we say it. It reminds me of my childhood and how my mother taught me how to speak kindly, how to watch my tone and how I say things. I was taught from a young age that how you express your emotions is extremely important. Of course, no one's perfect, but when we at least try to be mindful, we create room for real connection instead of conflict. I don't know all the answers. I don't. But this is what I've learned, and I'm using it to try and pull every ounce of humanity back to the center of the scales so that we can all finally create a world that is balanced enough that we can all see the light in each other's eyes, even though we might disagree. Which leads me to my next point. This next part may be difficult to hear, especially if you're identifying with the group I'm talking about. But I want you to know that I'm not speaking from a place of hatred. Even though I have every right to be angry as a trans person, I'm choosing not to. My rights are being taken away or threatened, but I know the real reason why people on the far right act the way they do. They would never admit it openly, but they are hurting deeply and have no idea how to deal with that in a healthy way. Of course, I am speaking from a place of love and from a hope that we can all rise above the fear and hatred that has been handed down to us over generations. I felt that the political sections of this are especially important to include since this is all connected. To end this episode, pulling it all together, what it comes down to is this: if we all were a little kinder to ourselves and to each other, no matter our differences and our traumas, we might actually be able to live in relative harmony. Like I said, it's never going to be perfect, but we even get, I'm going to reread that. I'm so sorry, everybody. Like I said, it's never going to be perfect, but we can get damn close if we actually put our minds and hearts to it. If we share ourselves in the world by sharing our passions with the intent to heal ourselves, others, or both, the world would be a better place, and quickly at that. But change takes time and willingness to be raw and open with ourselves first. Once we overcome our own beliefs and fears about ourselves and our lives and the world, we can be that much closer to the world we deserve. We just have to believe we're worthy of it first. Use whatever healing system feels right to you, whether that's chakras like I did, or some other healing system like therapy, or therapy in conjunction with chakras. However you heal the way you need to be healed. If you need to express rage, do that in a healthy way. If you need to cry your heart out, confide in a trusted friend, or journal your thoughts out and let the tears blot the ink. Do whatever it is that you need in order to light that spark, so that the crucible through fire does what it needs to do in order for your life to improve for you, so that you may find complete balance within yourself. Then we'll get the world we have all been wanting in the first place. So yeah, that was pretty much everything for part 2. There's probably going to be a couple more parts for this, just because what I had channeled originally for myself, there was a lot. I channeled for like 4 hours. so much stuff that I had to kind of like put into something relatively cohesive. But I did put some more homework clips in the description. They may feel like they don't have anything to do with what I was talking about, but like I said, this channel uses media to prove a point and how it's all connected no matter what. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Earthblood, even Werewolf the Apocalypse lore from the original RPG tabletop game, obviously Ghost Rider scenes, Watchmen, and Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. So, yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments, as well as tell me what your good news is. Thankfully, it didn't get too hot. I didn't have to put too many cuts in here. There might be one cut in there. I don't know if I'm going to cut it out yet, but my cat was outside and he was meowing, so I had to let him in. But anyway, other than that, just remember that liking and sharing the video, excuse me, I'm confirmation burp or something. I don't know what's going on. But basically just remember to share or like the video if you can, or feel inclined or feel called to do so, whatever you want to call it. And by doing so, it supports my dreams in creating books and maybe even, you know, like I said in this particular part, that it might actually lead to me fulfilling my dreams as well. So, yeah. But also like it because, you know, if you want to try and implement things that I talk about in here, feel free, and it will change your life, I promise. It might take a minute because you have to get used to it first and you have to kind of dig through some stuff in yourself, but it's worth it. 100%. But yeah, I'll leave it off with my usual saying of keep your minds and hearts open. Peace.